And she opens the door, pretending to be interested with what Mary Boyden Chesnut was doing. A half a dozen eggs alone, 600 Confederate dollars. Maybe one day we'll buy it from you. You know, Jefferson Davis looking down on you and says, you know, I don't think it's a very good idea first morning after your wedding night. The South were starving. I can barely sew on a button. And here they are mapping out the escape route. This is how men and women survived the Civil War. I'll take two, please. The detail on a poop pot.
Exactly right.
Because when the women found out, they sent the best that they had to offer. That here we are, Chesnut Cottage is still doing the same thing, offering the best that we have, and here we are.
Yeah. Password, please.
Hi, I'm Lily Ward, and I'm a guest here at Chesnut Cottage Inn.
And I'm Christal Doyle, Chief Experience Officer here at the Chesnut Cottage Inn Bed and Breakfast.
And I'm Ken Doyle at Chesnut Cottage Inn, the Chief Experience Officer. We're in Columbia, South Carolina.
So the house to the right of us was Governor Manning's home during the Civil War. It is also a historical house, but like every beautiful historical home now, it is a law office. I think Chesnut Cottage is one of the few homes where people can, you know, where it's not a law office and people can stay, you know, overnight. And we've done it in such a way where I feel like we're slowly moving into a self-guided tour. And then, of course, to the left of us was Woodrow Wilson's childhood home. He was around 12 years old when his family moved here after the Civil War, built that house, and he lived here until he went off to college. It's actually open to the public. It is now the Reconstruction Museum and home of President Woodrow Wilson. It's a beautiful property. So it was closed, and he happened to turn around and park right in front of the house. And I said, oh my, there's a historical marker. Let me go ahead and read that. I love historical markers. I said, Jefferson Davis was here. And it just so happens that the second innkeeper sees me through the doors. And she opens the door, like Scarlett O'Hara opening the doors to Tara. And she's like, hey, she goes, you want to come tour the house? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yes, please. So our first tour of this house, not knowing that we would end up here, was about 8 years ago now, honey? About 8 years ago. I was so impressed with the house then, you know, and I had made a joke with her and I said, maybe one day we'll buy it from you. Right? And here we are.
Yeah.
When we first bought it, we were a few months into it. Someone rang the doorbell. And I open it, and this beautiful elderly woman is in front of the door, and she introduces herself. And she says, my name is Christine Cronenberg. She said,
Okay.
and my great-grandfather, she says, built this house. And she says, these were built by the Germans. Because the Germans had come, and of course the skilled workers, the artisans, you know, the Europeans were being enticed to come and move to America. And in return, all right, aside from building these homes, they would also be given real estate. And that's why here you'll see towns like Germantown, Scandinavia. And now we have that historical marker here today because President Jefferson Davis visited the Chesnuts back in October of 1864. He was on his way to Virginia, wanting to give, you know, of course, the South a little bit of hope and just drum up some more support. But he kind of knew that the South wasn't doing too well. But after breakfast, Mary Boyden Chesnut writes in her diary that after breakfast, early morning, her and Jefferson Davis were seated right here in the piazza, she says. And the boy happens to be playing. There's a boy that happens to be playing and turns and recognizes the president, starts announcing to the town that there is a man that looks like Jeff Davis seated at the Chesnut porch. So she says, not long thereafter, she said, the town started to gather in front of the cottage. Well, Jeff Davis sees that, and he's like, I am not here for that, and tries to hide inside the house, but his aide taps him on the shoulder and says, Mr. President, the town would like for you to address them at 1 o'clock today.
Oh, my goodness.
And he says, it would be my honor. This is still our mailbox.
You still use it today?
Yes.
That is pretty cool.
Isn't that cool? 90% of what you see around the house when you're outside, looking at the house is original to the house. Original doors, original windows. Heart pine, this bureau, is what they refer to as a petticoat drawer. So there are two stories on these things. One, they said that the ladies would have this always by the front door so that they can check and make sure that their ankles weren't showing, right? Because that would be highly scandalous and inappropriate, right? But then Historic Columbia was just here recently to visit us, and she says, oh, no. These were used to reflect light because there was no electricity back then. So she said homes would have two of them. They usually come in pairs, and they would be in front of each other so that they can reflect light. I like the other story better.
I do too.
And this top part was a portable desk that Mary Boykin used, not the exact one, but one like it, of an actual writing library on this, for writing her diary.
So now we're going to go into the presidential suite.
Okay.
This is the President Jefferson Davis suite. And why is that? Well, because during his visit in October of 1864, Mary Boykin writes, I am preparing the president's apartment. So this would have been the parlor. The parlor would have been the biggest room in the house because this is where men sat and made important decisions, So we believe that this is where Mary would have prepared his sleeping quarters because he arrived with Custis Lee, who is General Lee's eldest son, Governor Lubbock of Texas, and I believe it was Major McLean of Virginia, whose home they had used to sign the surrender or the agreement at Appomattox. I do want to mention that our beds are custom made for Chesnut Cottage. So when we first bought the bed and breakfast, I said, what is it that we should tackle first? I said, well, it's in our name, right? The beds and the breakfast. Right? So we found a local company. It was founded by the great-grandmother, right, during the Great Depression, and they are still family-owned today. And of course, with the parlor, we now have a bathroom included in the suite. Back in the day, there were no bathrooms, of course. There were only outhouses.
All fake orchids.
No, they're real.
You are really good at taking care of them.
They just like to be left alone but taken care of. I give them a shower, drain them, and then put them back.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the key. That's why turning the rooms really takes a long time.
Yes, it does.
People think that, we want to come in early, like at noon. Like, no, it takes us hours to do one room because we have to inspect everything.
Yes.
It's floor to ceiling, inspecting everything.
Okay.
Yeah, so early check-ins is something we try to accommodate it, but it's not standard for us. So every check-in has fresh flowers.
I like that because I like real flowers.
Me too.
There's nothing like real flowers.
Now, back in the day, this was the library, and that's why this is the only room that has these double doors.
The one and only book that was written about James Chesnut Jr., the man who started the Civil War. Great read, good background on the war, and his involvement in it. And one of the most popular books, which actually made Mary Boykin Chesnut more popular than James Chesnut, is this A Diary from Dixie. Written in a diary form, but one of the most comprehensive books written about the Civil War. Ken Burns uses it extensively in his Civil War series.
Behind that bed are still the original pocket doors that would lead to the formal dining room, which today is now the General Chesnut Suite. Now, this is the only room in the house that has a lovely adjustable queen bed. The smallest room in the house, but it's quaint and cozy, and also one of my favorites. Well, they're all my favorites because they're all different. And of course, still has its own bathroom.
When I came into this room, this caught my eye because it reminded me of my great-grandmother in Germany. She had a pitcher like this and a bowl. She lived in a house that didn't have running water.
Wow.
She used this, to wash and bathe herself.
And you described exactly what this was used for back in the day, that having no water, no electricity, this is what they would have been using to wash their face or wash their hands. So this one over here, you brought up a really good point. I thought that this was for put their brushes and stuff like that. But what did you say they were for?
They held candles so that there'd be light so the person could see
Yes.
their reflection.
That made so much more sense. We're going to do that. So next time you come, there will be candles there.
Awesome. That'll be great.
Oh, that's so smart. I learn something every day. Now, this is a true Civil War quilt. Was gifted to us by Sherwood Garrett. Had been stored in a cedar chest, and when he passed away, Sherwood came and said, "This really does belong to Chesnut Cottage." We did a little bit of research on Civil War quilts. Back then, women would make these quilts in haste. Right? Because they wanted to provide two things to the soldiers, both Confederate and Union, by the way, which is bedding and warmth. It really didn't matter if it went to the Union or the Confederate soldiers. And they also used it to raise money for the cause because they were mostly abolitionists. So they would sell this at church fairs. And we also discovered that women would also stitch in the secret route to the underground tunnels for the slaves to, find their way to freedom. Isn't that something?
It is. And what's also amazing, all done by hand. And the stitches are all uniform.
I can barely sew on a button, and here they are mapping out
Exactly.
the escape route.
Yeah.
That's something else. Now, this portrait of Jefferson Davis is a gift to Mary Sparrow, the second innkeeper. Now, this portrait used to hang in the presidential suite, which made sense, right? Until, of course, we had newlyweds booking that room. And my husband, Ken, says, I don't think it's a very good idea to have, Jefferson Davis looking down on you on your first morning after your wedding night. So we moved him in a more prestigious place, I think, right here in the hallway. Of course, next to General Lee, because we would not be a proper Southern home without General Lee hanging on our hallway as well. Or now we're going to tour the General Chesnut Suite. Now, when this house was built, this would have been the formal dining room. And this door would have led to the kitchen. So if you're looking at this is now the back of the house. That was originally the window. You used to be able to lift that, and that would open up to the back porch, which now is our dining room. But this door over here would have led to the kitchen. And there's a back door here, and they would enter through the back door, do the last minute prep, right? Because they didn't cook here, and they would serve it now over here. And even Mary Boykin says that when that boy saw the president, which forced him to address the Colombians in our front porch, she says, "In my little house, the town had gathered, shoulder to shoulder." I can imagine that, because they lived in a plantation home in Camden. Beautiful, huge plantation home. So to live here, she wanted to live here because she wanted to be in the middle of everything. This is where everything was happening. She found Camden just absolutely boring. So she wanted to be here. She held parties here. She invited friends and attended, parties as well. And when the war started, she wanted to be close to the bulletin board, which is close to the State House, where they would publish what was going on. It's the public newspaper of sorts, So she writes in her diary that when the president was here, she said, shoulder to shoulder, people were gathered in my house just wanting to shake the president's hand. And she also writes that preparing for the president's arrival alone took her 30 days to gather eateries, she said.
Wow.
Because by then, the South were starving. Their money was worth almost nothing. And she said that she got more food. She was able to shop a little bit more just by trading or selling off her jewelry and her silk. A half a dozen eggs alone she said had cost her 600 Confederate dollars. But then she also writes that when the president was here, she says the patriotic public did not disappoint. Now, who would that be? That'd be the women. Because when the women found out, oh my goodness, the president was here, they sent the best that they had to offer, right? They sent, stuffed turkey, baked mushrooms, vintage Madeira, so they could have, something wonderful to drink, an aperitif of sorts. And then loan china, someone has sent in their china. So I think it's only, fitting today that here we are, Chesnut Cottage is still doing the same thing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
offering the best that we have, serving it in China. And a lot of the stuff that makes Chestnut breakfast happen is a gift from family and friends of Chesnut Cottage. I think that's what makes it unique. So now from the dining room, you are in the kitchen, adjacent to the formal dining room. This is the original door to the kitchen. And as you can see, these are still the original floors of the kitchen, how it was back in the 1850s. Because it's the only way that we can tell the story. And I think a lot of people stay here so they can also learn, some of the things that we've had so much fun learning, about this, from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War. So when I mentioned about Jefferson Davis hiding from the public when he originally did not want that, he was here in this kitchen, pretending to be interested with what Mary Boyden Chesnut was doing. And this is when his aide tapped him and said, no, sorry, you got to go out there and address the folks.
Poor guy.
Yeah, I know, poor thing. But Mary Boyden writes in her diary that she was here with Custis Lee and gossiping about what a poor, sad state the Confederate States were in, and that they were losing the war, regardless of what the president was telling the people up front. Now, this used to be the kitchen. It is now an extra room, very popular with our USC parents, because they would come here and, of course, need an extra bed for their son or daughter as they're dropping them off to USC. So a lot of our parents will try to book this room first because it is the largest room in the house. And this is why we have a twin bed here. So now we are standing on the original back porch. The original structure of the house is this was the back door.
Okay.
These two were the original windows. Back porch would have ended right here where you see this overhang.
So this was the door
Yes.
that was opened when the front door is open
Yes.
to let the breeze go through.
Yes. Exactly aligned with the front door, back door, and they'd let the breeze go through, help deal with, the heat sometimes, but also it lets the fresh air in during milder temperatures. It's wonderful. We can still do it with our new back door. I am now taking you to the 1718 room, also known as our speakeasy. But back in the day, this was the root cellar.
Okay.
Now, the 1718 room, before looking like it does today, this was all dirt.
Oh, wow.
This was all dirt. Okay.
Yeah.
And what happened was, and I used to call this the basement until we had historians out here say, no, ma'am, that is called the root cellar. I said, duly noted. Okay. So before looking like it does today, this was all dirt. And when Gail's first wife died, Diane Mitchell, whose idea it was to turn this into a bed and breakfast, his brother said, Gail, let's do something about that root cellar. And they decided that they would dig up the dirt and to turn it into like a man cave. So wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow, they dug up all the dirt.
Oh, wow.
Him and his brother, until they had enough headroom. And then, of course, poured the cement here in the speakeasy. But in pulling out all that dirt, they discovered all these bottles. And this goes to show you the lifestyle or what life was like during the Civil War and before, and just really how men took pride in everything they did, and just the bottles alone. And
Yes.
some of them, you can see that they signed it. This came from Richmond, Virginia, 1852.
Wow.
Right? And of course, these bottles over here, this is how men and women survived the Civil War.
Okay.
Okay. And we found out later how addicted a lot of the folks were to laudanum,
Oh.
which today is known as opium.
Yep.
Well, you know what? Okay, back then, opium was discovered. It cured a lot of things, dizzy spells, depression, toothache. If that's what you needed to get through day to day, especially with the women, I'm like, I'll take 2, please.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised. I won't be surprised if that had belonged to Mary Boykin and used it when she had lived here. Also found during the excavation were these cannonballs.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that something?
Yes.
Now, when the Union soldiers came, they were targeting 2 spots here in Columbia, the Capitol, the State House, and also the Arsenal. Of course, that's why it's called Arsenal Hill today, which is where the governor's house is at. And it is the highest point in Columbia. Those 2 places are less than they're 1.2 miles away from Chesnut Cottage. So it's not surprising that later we would discover these things here. And also this bayonet. This bayonet was also discovered here. We have a representative who stays here and who collects everything Civil War. And when he found us, we gave him the tour, and he went crazy with all this stuff. And he was just so impressed and took pictures and sent it to his curator. This one came back and said, James, that's not Civil War. That is revolutionary.
Oh, my goodness.
So we're going, wow.
Yeah.
These are handmade square nails.
Wow.
Back in the day, nails were handmade. They were not mass produced. So if you run your fingers across them, you will feel the ridges of those nails. Okay? That's how they built these houses.
I see up there the 1718, and you had spoken about it before.
Yes, I'm so glad you noticed that. Those are the original numbers of the house.
Wow.
So we wanted to make sure that we preserve them. And as we fix this speakeasy, we're going to find a nice spot to display that later on.
I also noticed what looks like part of a chamber pot down there.
Yes, this, so careful now, was indeed discovered here also in the grounds. This is part of a chamber pot. Look at
That is beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful? Look at the detail.
Yeah.
The detail on a poop pot.
Exactly right.
Look at that. I mean, they were making this going, oh my gosh, let's add, the beading and the medallion. And they just really put so much thought and design and artwork in everything that they did. So chamber pots back in the day, the reason why our beds, the reason why they're so tall is for them to be able to reach under the bed and grab the chamber pot.
To walk through the house
Correct.
with the chamber pot.
My goodness, you don't want to do that in the middle of breakfast.
No, definitely not.
Now here's the rest of the 1718.
Yes.
This is something that I found in a closet. It was hidden away. These are many of the original keys from each room, the skeleton keys.
Oh, wow.
Here. Here's another something that we found, and it's in the fine print, but it talks about a Doyle family in South Carolina selling their farm because it was right before the war.
Okay.
So he was going to be enlisted in the war for the Confederates, selling his farm.
This room, even though we're still working on it, has been very popular with our guests who will hold their post-wedding after the ceremony, after the reception, because the reception halls will close at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And they were here until maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, just doing pizza and karaoke. They had a blast.
I bet they did.
Neighbors never knocked. Police never came. No one knew they were. Nobody heard anything. These are Confederate dollars.
I wondered if that's what that was.
Yes.
That
Look
is
how
really
beautiful
cool. I
their
know,
bills
they're
were.
They're gorgeous.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful bills. And then there was one time when the USPS, and they did a commemorative series of notable men and women of the Civil War.
Wow.
Yeah, so look at that. Mary Chesnut, which I'm surprised she was
Wow.
here, that they had the wherewithal to
Yes.
include her,
Yes.
which was very important. These were the original brick steps that led from the outside down here, because this is where they stored all perishable items.
It was cooler down here.
Yes, this has been used quite often as a speakeasy for the wedding parties. What's fun about it is they would tell their friends, guys, when you arrive Chesnut Cottage, don't use the front door.
Okay.
Don't use the back door.
Okay.
What you will need, they said, is that password that we gave you so that you can enter the speakeasy. That's what makes this whole thing fun.
Password, please. Password, please.
And it's just a lovely place to come, hang out, sit, and we've had a lot of brides come and do their photographs here. One of the weddings actually just had their ceremony and also after party here. One was very formal, the other one was very casual. Both wonderful weddings. And over the ceremonies and the activities is this beautiful oak tree. This tree was probably here before the house was. This has been here for the longest time. And he says it's called a water oak because if you looked at the leaves of this tree, it is shaped like a water drop.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
So here we've had not only weddings, but we've hosted a couple of tea parties.
Oh.
The most recent one was the Palmetto Group, where the legislator's wife chose this venue. One long table of just 25 women, and we hosted their lunch here.
So you guys can do weddings,
We
tea
can.
parties,
We can.
and just have a bed and breakfast.
Yes. And
Legislatures here
Yes.
discussing things.
Correct. So people have asked us about our sauces. And here at Chesnut, we have our own specialty sauce. This is the Chesnut Cottage Golden Blend Barbecue Sauce. Now, this is mustard-based because we are here in South Carolina. And I think we came up with something that is uniquely ours, thanks to our guests who were more than willing to be our taste testers. And then we also make our very own bourbon sauce. This is served with our pancakes, fruits and stuff. Anytime that I just want to give a dish a certain pizzazz or something surprising, I will break out our very own bourbon sauce.
Okay.
It is made with real bourbon. This is called Lath and Plaster. I love to show people what the inside of our walls look like. I want to show you these pictures.
Oh, look at those dresses.
Yes. These ladies stayed here at Chesnut Cottage.
Uh-huh.
They are what we refer to as textile historians.
Okay.
And they had exclusive rights to examine Mary Boykin Chesnut's gowns and mimic them.
Oh, wow.
And they stayed here at Chesnut Cottage, sat down for breakfast in full regalia.
Oh.
Isn't that something?
That is something.
The gown is just around the corner over at the Robert Mills house.
Okay.
Yes.
Actual gown. They went over there and then they came here dressed like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they said that a gown like this is not something that you wear only once, right? You'll have to keep it through the years. So Mary Boykin's gown, maybe when she was a little younger, maybe had a little bit more of a neck, of a collar. And as years went by, she would take that same gown and make adjustments to it so it would be a little bit more off shoulder. So that's what they were teaching us. Yes.
Hi, I'm Lily Ward, and I'm a guest here at Chesnut Cottage Inn.
And I'm Christal Doyle, Chief Experience Officer here at the Chesnut Cottage Inn Bed and Breakfast.
And I'm Ken Doyle at Chesnut Cottage Inn, the Chief Experience Officer. We're in Columbia, South Carolina.
Let me know when you're ready for the 30-minute tour. Okay. So funny.